Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, January 23rd, 2026. Mr. Mokrzycki, do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have one. Our employee recognition, item 5. We're going to request to move Brittany Young. We had planned to be with us, our law librarian. She fell ill, and so she can't be with us today, so we'll reschedule that for a time that she is able to be here.
Okay, noted. Item 5 will be removed and postponed because I'm sure we would all love to explain to Brittany how great she is.
All right.
Next, item 2, emergency business.
None.
None? Okay. Seeing none. Next up, we have county administration, item 3A, and I see Ms. Moody in the crowd. This is a public hearing and action order and resolution on 2606-2301 in the matter of adopting the fiscal year 25-26 supplemental budget number 4, making, reducing, and transferring appropriations. Ms. Moody.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Seneca, Commissioners. So as mentioned, this is our 4th supplemental, our final supplemental budget of the fiscal year, since this is your last meeting. We timed this supplemental to be near the end of the fiscal year in order to ensure that we have the best data on where we project our expenditures to end up. So really having a goal of making sure we're not, that we're moving things that need to be budgeted in the next year. You'll see a bit of that occurring, especially in Public Works, timing of projects. Something's not completed by the end of the fiscal year, they move it to 26, 27. And then we have one that I will highlight for you as well, is we look to our personnel budgets in particular, because of us budgeting for vacancy variance at the beginning of the process, to see if those have indeed held and whether we need to increase our personnel budgets. I highlight that because that is happening within the Sheriff's Office budget. LCPOA union completed their contract mid-year, which means we didn't have those personnel numbers when we built this budget. And so we wait until supplemental 4 to see whether we need to increase personnel budgets. So that is creating a movement of just under $1 million from general fund road fund into the Sheriff's Office budget to cover that personnel that would have been budgeted had we had that contract at the beginning of the fiscal year. I'll also highlight for you that there is a reduction of 6.5 FTE within this supplemental budget. There is reductions within the community health centers. The board has heard a bit about that from Health and Human Services. So they continue to make adjustments in that budget here at the end of this fiscal year. And then you'll see some additional in the adoption occurring. The funds that are changing by, there are 4 funds changing by 10%, which is causing the need for the public hearing today. Those are the county school fund. Receiving secure rural schools means we have more money to pass on to extension service. That money passes through the county's budget, so that increases expenditures there. Extension Service Levy Fund, just adjusting for what we believe will be actuals, so adjusting what will be paid out there as well. That's not a very large fund, so it doesn't take a lot to hit that 10%. And then we have the Fire Defense Board Fund. That's also a fairly small fund. They're rebudgeting some projects, moving them forward. And then the Parks Levy Fund, again related to rebudgeting projects that are occurring, will occur next year instead. So I think that is the highlight of the larger changes. They're summarized within the memo for you as well. So with that, we're ready for the public hearing.
Okay, this is a public hearing on supplemental budget number 4 for the current fiscal year budget as allowed under ORS 294-471 and ORS 294-473. This public hearing is required under ORS 294-473 due to one or more funds amending expenditures by more than 10% from current budgeted amounts. Notice of this hearing and summary of the changes was published as detailed in the supplemental budget order and resolution included in this agenda item. Participants may testify for or against any item contained in the supplemental budget. Ms. Ashbridge, do we have any? Ms. Gebb, do we have anybody online for the supplemental budget public hearing?
We do have folks joining us. Let's check in with them. For those joining us virtually, if you would like to give testimony in this public hearing regarding the fiscal year 25-26 supplemental budget number 4, please raise your virtual hand now. I am not seeing any hands raised. Return it to you, Chair.
Okay, we will close the public hearing then, and do we have any additional comments?
No additional comments, Chair.
Okay, do we have any discussion by the board? Seeing none, I will look for a motion.
Chair, I move to approve the order and resolution adopting the fiscal year 25-26 supplemental budget number 4.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by by Commissioner Lovell and seconded by Commissioner Trieger to move to approve the supplemental budget number 4 for fiscal year 25-26. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Health and Human Services, Public Hearing and Action Order, number 26, and here comes Ms. Gray. Perfect.
Morning.
Ms. Gray and her companion.
That's right. For another few months at least. Okay, so this is a continuation of what I brought forward to you in the EMS Funding Task Force update, where I gave you a brief overview of Ambulance Service Area Number 2, which is located in the very northwest corner of Lane County. We received notification from the current ASA holder, which is the transport agency that provides services in ASA number 2, that they intended to end transport services in that geographic area as of July 1st of 2026. We do have interest from Western Lane Fire and EMS. Their board approved that they would accept the ambulance service area if it was assigned by the Board of Commissioners, because it is your action ultimately that determines who gets access to which ambulance service areas. It makes a lot of sense because it is just a continuation north for their ambulance service area. Because state law does not contemplate moving quickly in circumstances like these, we need to take a temporary action today in order to authorize Western Lane Fire and EMS to start covering ambulance service area number 2 as of July 1st. Then we will take further action. There will be 2 more public hearings at the end of August and likely early September, where we will have the conversation about the permanent assignment for ASA number 2. I don't anticipate that anyone will be coming in wanting to take this away because it's a pretty sparsely populated and rural area, but we do need to give the opportunity for anyone to weigh in if they wish for there to be competition in this area. So in the meantime, to make sure that all residents of Lane County have access to ambulance services without interruption, we are requesting you to take action today on this temporary assignment, and then we'll bring the item back for the permanent discussion later on this summer. So I think with that, we're ready for the public hearing.
Yes, okay, so today is June 23rd, 2026. I am opening a public hearing on order number 26062302 in the matter of temporarily authorizing Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority to provide ambulance services for ambulance service area number 2, Northwest. The order of these proceedings is for this hearing will be first the report by staff, followed by public testimony, and then additional comments by staff. I assume we're good with your report there, Ms. Gray? Okay, are there any questions from commissioners for Director Gray?
Chair, not a question or comment, but I can reserve that until after public testimony.
It's up to you.
I will reserve it.
Okay, perfect.
Hi there, everyone. It's Marcus Vayar here. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm here remotely. I will say that before we proceed, it would be advisable for the commissioners to declare any conflicts of interest. And so just to kind of get that away early before we continue on with the public hearing.
Okay, so I will start with Vice Chair Buck.
None.
Commissioner Farr.
None, I have none.
Commissioner Trieger.
None.
Commissioner Lovell.
None.
And I have none. Okay, So now we will go on to the public testimony. I'm seeing no public testimony in Harris Hall. Ms. Gebb?
I will check with our online queue. For those joining remotely, if you would like to give testimony during this public hearing regarding the temporarily authorizing Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority to provide ambulance services for ambulance service area number 2, please raise your virtual hand now. I'm not seeing any hands raised, Chair. Return to you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gebb. That will conclude the public testimony. Do we have any more comments from staff?
No.
Okay. Commissioners. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Just wanted to mention that you responded, Ms. Mokrowski and Director Gray, the response to this was remarkable. It was very short notice, relatively small number of people who are affected by this, but people who are affected by it are affected in a very large way. So whereas the probability is low, the magnitude is high. And it's just remarkable that you were able to do things as quickly as you were able to do, kind of a testimonial to the way that we work here at Lane County. That little area of Lane County is tiny, but it's wonderful. That's where, for anybody listening or watching who cares, it's where Ocean Beach State Park is, wonderful state park down below the Sea Perch, which is a RV park up there, but a lot of residents in that general area too, and providing ongoing service, even though it's on a temporary basis until we get something more concrete in place. Again, Director Gray, remarkable work to get to this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I also want to give huge kudos to Mr. Vehar and Mr. Bovet, who worked to identify a compliant pathway forward for this temporary assignment.
What's that?
I said unless the vice chair wanted to, I'm happy to.
Oh, no. Okay. Any other comments? Well, very well said, Commissioner Farr. That was along the lines I wanted to hit on. I know it was weighing on people pretty heavy in my district, so thanks everybody so much for the hard work. And this went just, from where we sit, absolutely flawless, even though I know there was a lot of work behind scenes, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
And Chair, I forgot Neptune State Park, isn't that the same district?
And also kudos and thanks to Western Lane Fire and EMS and their board for taking this on outside of their taxing district and working so quickly to serve the needs of the coastal community.
Okay, so we'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Chair, I move to close the public hearing on Order 2606-2302.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Lovell to close the public hearing on Order 2606-2302. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Chair, was that just a motion to close the hearing, or was that a motion? That wasn't a motion on the order, was it?
Close the public hearing.
Great. I'm happy to make the motion on the order when you're ready.
Okay. The record is now closed for this public hearing, and it is time for the board deliberation to take place and action. Staff has presented a couple options. Any deliberation? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
Chair, I move approval of Order 26-06-23-02 in the matter of temporarily authorizing Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority to provide ambulance services for Ambulance Service Area 2.
A motion made.
second.
Seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve action Order 2606-2302 in the matter of temporarily authorizing Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority to provide ambulance services for Ambulance Services Area Number 2 Northwest. Any discussion to the motion? Mr. Trigger?
Thank you. I'll just note, this is one of those unseen parts of what I consider this part of our public safety system. And just want to add my appreciation to Western Lane and their board. If you have contact for those board members, Director Gray, if you wouldn't mind forwarding them on, just so I can send a note of appreciation. And just because of other items we have and who's in the room, I will just say it is very much a service that tourists to Lane County, because the coast is a very popular tourist destination, both from Lane County residents and people outside our county visit. And so this is a really important piece of the of the puzzle for making sure everyone is safe while they're recreating, as well as for the residents of that little sliver of Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, very important stuff. Any further deliberations? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Okay, motion carries 5-0. All right, Order 2606-2302 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray, and everybody that was involved.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we are skipping employee recognition. We have public comments. We've got 2 pages, popular day. This is time for public comments. You will have 3 minutes. Your time will start when you come to the dais and give us your name. And we will start right away with Mary Leone. On deck, we have Sydney Swing.
Mary Leone here. Thank you to the board for listening carefully to our arguments for the inclusion of LARs into the county public works maintenance system. I appreciate that several members have expressed a desire to resolve the existing divide between those residents whose roads are preserved and those whose roads are not. One proposal by County Council is for LAR homeowners to unite in community spirit and agree to a special tax district for themselves to pay for these roads. While I value civic altruism, most major public engineering projects are funded by the entire community. I have yet to see a subset of current taxpayers agree to an additional tax solely on themselves in order to benefit everyone. Perhaps it must be restated that these are public roads and should be paid for as such. Though many people think that their property taxes are used to pay for roads, that is not the case. LAR residents and homeowners already pay for road maintenance, just as their county-maintained road neighbors do through gas taxes and vehicle registration fees. It cannot be lawful to assess some residents twice for the same level of services. We are not asking for special treatment. We know budgets are constrained. Adding our 13 miles to the county's 1,400-plus system might delay some planned projects, but it is a 1% increase in total workload. And this adoption could be spread over a few years if necessary, as long as all roads are included and treated equitably. Public Works presented a report to the board on the cost to bring LARs up to 2026 urban standards. Minimal figures for immediate acceptance and basic maintenance were not included. Their position is that the county cannot feasibly adjust for the additional inflated costs in the report. Yet, Lane County's current road condition is better than all others in the state. According to Orrin Schumacher on April 29, 2025, Lane County's pavement condition has been maintained phenomenally well. Across the state, we were number 1 in those condition assessments based on our preservation model. The success of those preservation strategies demonstrates the value of maintaining roads before they fail, and this is another reason why LARs should be fitted into the schedule as soon as possible. There could be a 1% accommodation in the budget in order to treat all residents and roads the same. There should be no second-class citizens in Lane County and no second-class roads. Past mistakes and excluding some roads while accepting others of equal condition and usage need not and should not be continued. Please fix this problem now by directing Public Works to accept these LRRs as is into the county system. Set this foundation so that future building will proceed equitably and reliably as Lane County grows. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next up, we have Sydney with Irene Alltucker, second.
Good morning. My name is Sydney. I purchased my home 10 years ago, and it wasn't until last fall I discovered that I live on a lane access road. I never would have known about it if I didn't just happen to have a neighbor tell me, or until the bill came if the Public Works proposal to charge homeowners for road maintenance is accepted. This isn't just a problem of inequity. The homeowners impacted aren't just homeowners. We are households, we are families, we are not just a few, we are many. My property value isn't about the worth of my asset. It's about the security of my home and my child's future. The extreme liability affecting 1,000 or more households wasn't disclosed. For the most part, our roads look like any other and are used like any other. Paying to update them in full now isn't a solution. Creating a new district isn't a solution. Dividing $90 million between 1,000 households isn't a solution. We already pay the appropriate transportation taxes and merely want to get in line for road maintenance like everyone else. ORS 368 gives the county full authority to correct this outdated classification. All current proposals are antithetical to the goals and values espoused by the county. When faced with a problem of inequity, it is only ethical to resolve it, not deepen it. I urge you to reclassify LARS for the good of the whole and as the most practical solution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Irene Altucker with Miguel Francisco on deck.
Good morning. It's my walk-up sound. Good morning. My name is Irene Altucker. I'm here as an advocate for the hundreds of restaurant, retail, and hotel employees that will be directly affected by your decision. 3 years ago, the Board of County Commissioners approved a 2% transient lodging room tax increase. This increase reflected a deliberate commitment to improve this community's tourism infrastructure. After listening to many voices, the Board of County Commissioners responded. You understood the importance of tourism to economic development, i.e. jobs. You, the Board of County Commissioners, heard the need to increase visitors year-round. You stated the increase in the transient lodging tax would be dedicated to build the infrastructure needed to attract visitors in the winter months when the economic impact would be felt most. These funds, although collected, have not been dedicated to a specific project. For the past 3 years, while the funds have been collected, Travel Lane County has undertaken studies and site-specific evaluation for the highest and best use of these funds. It's important that we follow through with a project that will have the return on investment you intended. We're not looking for a knee-jerk reaction to a proposal. Rather, there's careful consideration to make sure these transient lodging tax funds will do what they were intended when you passed the increase. You passed the increase to increase the tourism infrastructure, and that need remains unchanged. The people of Lane County need jobs, and tourism is a key employer. Please do not misinterpret my statements today to reduce funding of public safety. Rather, I'm imploring you to find a long-term, stable source of funding for public safety. The Public Safety Funding Task Force did not suggest the short-term fix to use transient room tax. The task force recommended and provided guidance that should be followed. I appreciate your time today and your careful consideration. As you know very well, the decision you make today will have a long-term effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Next up is Nigel Francisco with Tim Smith on deck.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Nigel Francisco, lifelong resident of Lane County, District 5. My career really spans travel and tourism, has been directly supported by travel and tourism. I actually started out as an airline pilot in 2003, then worked for a large regional craft brewery, then a winery, and now I work in development where we have a lot of hospitality assets. None of these businesses would be successful without the strength of the travel and tourism industry. You know, through my short career, my short 25-year career, I've seen that direct impact. You look at the traveler, the enplanements from the Eugene Airport, there were a little over 300,000 in 2003. Now that number is over 800,000. That's not by accident. That's directly because of the work that Travel Oregon has done, and more specifically Travel Lane County, with the investment of those TRT dollars. So there's three major reasons I have why I'd like you to not use the travel and tourism dollars for public safety. The first one is erosion of public trust. This industry came to the county commission, and that was voted through to increase the lodging tax to support off-peak demand. The second reason is the cannibalization of economic development. So travel and tourism is one of our largest industries in Lane County. Lane County is, not the biggest jobs employer, and those jobs that I talked about support manufacturing and other industries that, again, has directly impacted me and the people I've worked with. And then finding a temporary solution to a long-term problem. We need to work in this county to figure out what that mechanism is to be able to support public safety in a long-term fashion and not a short-term knee-jerk reaction. So I would urge you to use reserve funds to support public safety and follow the recommendations of the Public Safety Commission that was put together. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nigel. Next up, we have Tim Smith with David Eigel on deck.
Good morning. My name is Tim Smith. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Merite Hotel Management. We operate 6 hotels in Lane County across Eugene and Springfield and employ hundreds of employees, obviously, in those hotels. I don't think it comes as a surprise that winter is our toughest season. I see it every year. We go through the same cycle of the lack of infrastructure to drive winter demand, reduces our revenue stream. That has an immediate impact on our employees, the hundreds of people that I mentioned that we employ. I can tell you in Q1 of each year, our leadership team does what we call a Big Mo Roadshow. We go out and we talk with our teams and get some face-to-face time with them for them to comment directly on the things we can do better as a company and the things that they love that we do as a company. I can tell you that the number one question asked was, how can we get more hours? How can I make more money? How can I pay for groceries, pay for gas, all those things? With that in mind, it became pretty evident many, many years ago, I think and I'm only a 3-year resident of Eugene, but as long as 30 years ago, that there were studies funded to find out what we could do for winter travel, winter demand, and how we could build an infrastructure to bring year-round demand. Every one of those studies has identified that multi-use indoor sports and recreation facilities would be viable in this community and would be a good driver for winter revenue. It was presented to us to approve a 2% increase in transient lodging tax to help fund this investment. It was proposed that this increase in funds would go directly towards that. So it is, as Nigel mentioned, a matter of trust when at this point we're now being told that those funds will be used for something, potentially used for something different. In order for us to make a viable winter demand generator, it is urgent that we use all of those funds to build out this investment. This will provide stable employment, stable income opportunities for our hundreds of employees through the winter season, and it will also increase community engagement, give our local community somewhere they can go in the winter. I urge you to use other resources, use our reserves in the short term while you search for a long-term solution to our emergency services. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim Smith. Next up, we have David Eigel with Joel Corrin as on deck.
David Eigel, good morning. Do any of our county commissioners now believe that Eugene was a sundown town? In that the documented record I have provided incontrovertibly documents that it was not, the question that needs to be answered is why the commissioners haven't apologized and informed the public that funding the North Bank Memorial was a serious mistake. Anyone can ask Google AI about the census records for Eugene during the decades of 1900 through 1960 and consult other public sources that confirm our 135 proud years of black residents. Anyone can read various articles in the local press that explicitly document the presence of black residents. That being the case, it's time for the commissioners to act responsibly and acknowledge that they've been scammed by Alicia Brown and her associates. Her narrative is complete nonsense. Eugene was not a sundown town. The North Bank community was racially mixed, not black. The residents were living there not because of their race, but because of an extreme housing shortage. They had no property rights in the land. They were been given permission to squat on a rent-free basis. Eminent domain was not employed. Lacking electricity, water, and sanitation, the area was hardly a thriving community. We all make mistakes, but commissioners are supposed to act responsibly to correct known mistakes. You haven't so far. If you don't act, I will. I can assure that come the fall that enough of the public will be aware of this fiasco and your lack of taking redemptive action that this will become a widely known scandal, possibly attracting national attention. I would rather donate money for scholarships and school enrichment programs than using the media to advise the public of how public officials are letting them down, but I will, if I have to. County officials need to act now. The longer you wait, the more embarrassing this will be for you. I've already begun informing the public. I can cite conclusive primary source documentation that is available to support what I'm saying. Talisha Brown hasn't, and she and city and county officials won't be able to. If any of the commissioners would like to consult with me, I am available to you. If any of you still believe that Eugene was a sundown town, please say so in your remonstrance or email me. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eigel. Next up, we have Jill Corn with Brad Beebe on deck.
Good morning. I'm here to talk on behalf of the people here who want the county to adopt the LARs within the urban growth boundary. There's something known as the Equity and Community Consortium. The Equity and Community Consortium consists of the City of Eugene, City of Springfield, Lane County, University of Oregon, LCC, 4J, Bethel School District, and Springfield School District. The EWEB, the Springfield Utility Board, and Willamette Lane Park, and the Lane Council of Governments. On their website, they define equity. Equity refers to fair and just practices and policies that ensure all community members can thrive. Equity is not equality. Equality implies treating everyone as if they were exactly the same. Equity means acknowledging and addressing structural inequalities that create advantages and disadvantages. They define community or inclusiveness as inclusion refers to a community where all members are and feel respected, have a sense of belonging, and are able to participate and achieve their potential value. Those of us that live on LARs do not believe that there is equal advantages for everybody. We are the disadvantaged ones. I live on Park Terrace. It runs for 1 block between a county road, Sunnyside, and a county road, Park Avenue. Why this 1 block with 4 houses is not part of the county system connecting those 2 other county roads, I don't know. All that we ask is that you live up to this language about equity and addressing the structural inequalities. You have the power to do it. We ask that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Next up, we have Brad Beebe with Joe Lierbach on deck.
Good morning. I've lived in the River Road area since 1993, and I'm one of the hundreds of households that has found out that, my road is on an LAR and I'm responsible for it. And I've watched this closely because once it's resolved, I believe we can incorporate this into the county. And this conversation of equity is, I believe, is something that needs to be really pursued. But also, I believe we need to pursue the budget that was addressed on the 6th of this month. And it seems like Lane County has a budget shortfall. And there was many conversations about we don't have enough money to maintain the sink wells and maintain, it's going to cost thousands of dollars to maintain per mile what is, proposed to be, rebuilt. And I think we need to step back from the financial side of it and see where we can save money. So in addition to equity, we can find a way to lower the cost. There's been a talk of putting curbs on some of these roads. On the road I live on, if you put curbs on it, with the increase of ADUs, it's going to potentially limit the number of parking for people who need their vehicle in order to get to work and back every day. And I just happened to talk to a person who is disabled, rides around in a wheelchair, and he absolutely hates sidewalks because his disability, one arm is stronger than the other, and when you have a tip into a driveway, it could cause them to tip. So, there's a problem there. Plus, a lot of the people along the street that I live on do not want to have a sidewalk. We're happy with what we've had. We've had it for many, many years. Also, there's they're talking about putting in sink wells. There was a comment on the 6th of this month that said we don't have enough equipment to be able to maintain those sink wells. So, and also the trees and shrubs, you don't have enough equipment apparently to take care of that because we have trees that are within 5 feet of the ground now that are down the road that I live on. So we don't have enough money for what we want, but we want to have the Taj Mahal of roadways when we go through these. And we don't have a problem of water runoff or anything like that. We don't need those. So I hope that we look at the budget and come together and find a way to find a middle-of-the-road solution so that we don't have to have all these unnecessary additions. We are responsible for the roadway and nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Next up, we have Joe Lieberbach with Polly Habliston on deck.
Good morning, Chair Senega and County Commissioners. For the record, my name is Joe Liebersbach, and I am the Director of Business Advocacy and Leadership Development at the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce strongly supports adequate funding for all public safety services. We also recognize the very difficult fiscal challenges facing Lane County and understand the importance of maintaining rural patrol services, supporting our Sheriff's Office, and ensuring a safe community for residents, visitors, and businesses alike. However, we respectfully oppose the proposal to utilize any transient lodging tax dollars for these purposes. Public safety remains one of the Chamber's highest priorities for our entire county. Our position is not rooted in opposition. Our position is based on our longstanding belief that transient lodging tax revenues should be used for the purpose for which they were intended, directly investing in tourism, destination development, and economic growth. Throughout the last legislative session, the Eugene Chamber joined a ton of chambers of commerce, destination organizations, and others across Oregon in opposing efforts to weaken this longstanding framework governing transient lodging tax revenues. We did so because we believe these dollars represent an investment strategy, not simply a county revenue source. Tourism is one of Lane County's most important economic sectors. Visitors support local hotels, restaurants, retailers, wineries, attractions, and recreation providers. These visitor dollars generate jobs, wages, and tax revenues that benefit our entire county. The TLT funds that have accumulated over time represent future opportunities to strengthen that economic engine through destination development projects, infrastructure, event attraction, and other investments that continue to grow our local economy. Using those reserves to address ongoing operating expenses may provide short-term budget relief, but also diverts important resources away from the very activities that generate future economic returns. We also believe that there's an important distinction between reserves generated from tourism-related revenues and the county's general fund reserves. Public safety is a core governmental responsibility. If one-time dollars are needed to bridge current budget challenges, we believe the general fund reserves are the more appropriate source because they align directly with the county's obligation to provide essential services and maintain the intended use case for all funds on the table. We respectfully urge the board to look to general fund reserves and other sustainable funding strategies to address public safety needs, preserving TLT reserves for tourism and economic development purposes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Joe. Next up, we have Polly Habliston with Lenore Lipinski on deck.
Good morning. My name is Polly Habliston, and I'm here today to share my thoughts on local access roads from the standpoint of someone who's lived on one for 47 years. I live on Dalton Drive and found the historical perspective presented by Public Works early on in this process interesting. In the early 1930s, no new subdivisions were being filed in all of Eugene. Residential development was brought to a standstill following the Depression. As the economy began to improve, most construction projects were established in parts of town. The exception was the Sonny Lee addition, platted on Frank Horn's property in River Road in 1937. My street, Dalton Drive, was one of 5 long dead-end streets stretching from Horn Lane 2/3 of the way to Howard Avenue. If these streets were the first LARs in River Road, then we're talking about a problem that started 89 years ago. I'd like to start by thanking the commissioners for your time and effort addressing this issue. You didn't create the problem, but you have it in your capacity to fix it. I'm just curious how many people here today are representing LARs. Could you just raise your hand? I'd like the commissioners to see that this is not a very small issue. It's a huge issue. LARs are public neighborhood roads whose residents pay the same transportation taxes via gas and vehicle registration fees as do people on county and city roads. LAR residents' dollars go toward fixing others' roads while our roads get nothing. More concerning is the liability faced by residents of LARs. The specter has been raised of the possibility of residents being sued after a tragic accident, perhaps a bicyclist hitting a pothole and being paralyzed from the neck down. We've been advised that we are in a catch-22. By definition, LARs are public roads, so we cannot purchase liability insurance to protect ourselves from such a suit because we do not own the road, yet we are responsible for keeping the road safe. An equitable solution would be for LARs within the urban growth boundary to be added to the rules of county roads and included in the county maintenance rotation. These roads look like roads adjacent to them. The LAR moniker should be dropped. Failing to properly label these roads as county roads never should have happened. It's been almost 90 years of kicking the can down the road, people selling houses, people buying houses, and only now are we finding out why some streets undergo regular maintenance while our particular streets are languishing. Please do the right thing and vote to take these roads into the county system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Polly. Next up, we have Glenora Whitbinski with Linda Levick on deck.
So about the LARs, first of all, I've never heard any evidence that LARs are any different historically from any other roads in the River Road area. We hear this. I don't have any evidence to that. I don't believe it. If you look at them currently, my understanding is you cannot tell the difference between LARs and other roads. So I think the idea that even the concept of having the LARs doesn't make sense just on that basis. And as you know, people who live on LARs pay road maintenance taxes just the same as people who pay on county-maintained roads. Where has our money gone? How has it been spent? Why should we pay for a service we don't receive? My house is 60 years old. For 60 years, we've been paying taxes, and the people who owned it before we did have been paying taxes. Where is all that money? One thing that's missing in the Public Works report is an assessment of how much money that has cost and how that's money going to be returned to us. So I think that if the view is going to be that LARs are going to continue to exist and we're going to continue to be responsible for them, I want to see a plan for how we're going to get paid back for everything we paid that we haven't, has not been used for our help. Next, people who are on LARs are not allowed to block access. They are public roads. There are a lot of people that use our LAR as a cut-through road. There are very heavy garbage trucks, lots of use that's not by us, but we're not allowed to block access to that road. So we're being told we have to maintain roads, which are in practice public roads. So how in the world can we consider that a fair situation? Now, supposedly, including LARs in the county road system would cost more. Clearly not so, because there's a limited amount of money for road maintenance. And I think we could all agree, we're not going to see much increase in that. There's been a lot of fuss about that this last year across the state. So it's not like it's going to cost more because there's going to be a certain amount of money. The real question is, how is that money going to be distributed? Is it going to be distributed fairly across everyone who lives on a public road? Or are some people going to be sorted out and not supported for reasons that, as far as I know, can't be justified? And then really offended by in the Public Works report, suggesting that the LARs have to be put in much, much, much better condition than almost any other roads in the area.
Thank you for your public comment, Glenora. Your time is
That doesn't
up.
make any sense at all. So anyway, basically,
Glenora,
we ask that
your
we be
time is up.
treated
Thank you.
fairly. Oh, sorry.
No problem.
I thought I was going to go short.
Yep, absolutely. Linda Lovick with Water Shoe following.
Good morning, Commissioners here in Harris Hall and Commissioner Buck remotely. My name is Linda Lovick, and I'm a resident of River Road neighborhood. I learned a year and a half ago that our intended aging-in-place home is located on a so-called LAR, local access road. I believe my shock and befuddlement over that discovery are already in the public record. Checking my files, I see that citizen interaction with your board regarding these urban LARs commenced in January of 2025. Since then, there has been much public testimony continuing today, and several letters to you hoping to leave no aspect unrevealed for your consideration. There have also been your various interactions with the Public Works Department, including receiving their report on June 9th, our comprehensive written response to that report, and most recently, some media attention. Standing out in my mind are two things: our need-driven steadfastness of purpose and your thoughtful responses to the Department of Public Works report on the LAR's situation. The record by now must be overflowing with the issues, the consequences, the risks to homeowners, the ridiculous, unnecessary unfairness of the urban LAR's situation. I'm here today to thank you rather than to rehash the narrative, to express my appreciation for your collective digging in on June 9th for the questions you posed back, to the report prep team for your seeing with us the broader possibility that the report's price tag for the needed action is not the only way forward. In fact, it is the least productive way forward. Thank you for observing the situation through the fairness lens. You've given me hope, me anyway, that reason and justice just might prevail, that you might use your authority to create an ordinance to accept these urban LARs into the county road system as they are, to fairly receive maintenance when possible, like all the other county-maintained public roads in River Road and the Santa Clara neighborhoods. That acceptance was originally a basic task, but obviously has been complicated by the passage of time. We all, meaning here in the room and the hundreds of our affected neighbors, we all are not asking for special treatment. We're only asking for equal treatment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Laura Shu with Richard Boyles on deck.
Good morning. Thank you so much for looking into this local access roads issue. You asked great questions last week. You expressed eloquently what homeowners are facing and how this situation arose from county decisions. And you understood that this is an equity issue. On the LAR's report, staff worked diligently for over 6 months and followed the policies and processes they had been given. But your meeting last week revealed the deeper issue, that the policy framework underlying the report was the wrong tool for the problem. Public Works acknowledged that the lane manual road acceptance process, which undergirds the report, was likely written for newly constructed roads and developers, not for longstanding existing roads and homeowners. There is no lane manual chapter for staff to follow to address a decades-old equity problem. That's why this requires strong leadership. Solving this means stepping outside the existing process, not just modifying it. Start with the goal of bringing these legacy roads into the system, then build the simplest process to get us there. For every proposed requirement, asking, is it legally required? Is it necessary for safety? Is there a simpler, less expensive way? How are these issues handled on existing county roads? Does this place burdens on the very homeowners this inequity has harmed? Today, you are going to recognize county employees for outstanding work. I would love to come back to a future meeting where public works staff are being recognized for solving this, for showing that the government can knock down barriers rather than raise them, for taking something that seemed impossible under the old assumptions and finding a creative, practical solution that works. That's the opportunity here, but it will require leadership from the board, the county administrator, and the public works director. Leadership that challenges assumptions, rewards creativity, and keeps focus on the ultimate goal, a practical solution that achieves equity. Please give staff that challenge and the support to meet it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Richard Boyles with Dana Terrell on deck.
Good morning, Chair Seneca, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to address you on the topic of the 26-27 draft budget and the allocation of TLT that is in that draft budget. Others have already clearly and eloquently laid out the arguments for preserving the current use of TLT. I won't repeat those. I will say you were presented with a budget that pitted TLT use against public safety use, but that choice is not one you have to make. You do have reserves. Past commissions have prudently set those aside so that you would be in a position to make decisions like the one that you are faced with as you look at this budget. So I'll simply urge you to use your option to use reserves and preserve TLT for its intended purpose and the many great things that it can accomplish in terms of a facility here in Lane County in the coming years. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyles. Next up, we have Dana Terrell with Samara Phelps on deck.
Good morning, Chair Seneca, Vice Chair Buck, and commissioners. My name is Dana Terrell, and I am a resident and small business owner in Eugene. You have heard me speak before about fiscal year 26-27 and the budget and the specific use of transient lodging tax. My continued request is to not use transient lodging tax for public safety and to preserve it for its intended use as you dedicated it. You've heard me speak about that, so today I'm going to take a little different tactic and thank you. Thank you for doing the hard work that it takes to be commissioners every day. This is one issue of so many issues. You have a lot of issues that you face. I know that, and I also know public safety is very important to all of us, yes, visitors included, and definitely residents. I want to thank you for dedicating the 2% to tourism infrastructure, which is your dedication to tourism infrastructure. That was such a hopeful moment for us in the tourism industry to know that you felt, as we did, that the 2% was the amount of money it needed to build the infrastructure that will help this industry return investment, return money to all of us throughout the county, and help out all of the businesses, the hotels, the restaurants, and the activities in the winter months when it is very challenging. So that was a bold moment, and I continue to thank you for it. And I thank you today and for the weeks leading up to this for asking the hard questions, looking for the options. I know it's difficult to do this, but I appreciate the hard questions and options that you're looking into to be able to preserve that 2% TLT for how you intended it and to look at other options. And I also encourage you to take those options seriously and to maintain TLT as you dedicated it for tourism infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Next up, we have Samara Phelps with Joshua Keelis on deck.
Good morning. Thank you again for the time. My name is Samara Phelps. I'm president and CEO of Travel Lane County. And like Dana, you have heard from me. I'm here to represent Travel Lane County and our respectful request that the board not use transient lodging tax to fund public safety in the fiscal year 26-27 budget. Travel Lane County is the marketing organization and the county's primary partner in growing the visitor economy here in Lane County. Lane County, as staff and as this board, has long valued and supported the benefits of the industry that brings and what it brings to this community. And I appreciate the time each of you and the staff have taken in understanding the issues and the nuances of stewarding not only Lane County, but this particular fund, transient lodging tax. For more than 30 years, this region has struggled with insufficient winter visitation. You've heard testimony on this and this from our organization for a long time. Our shoulder and off-peak seasons represent a persistent gap that undermine our economic stability here in Lane County. When the industry explored funding mechanisms for a tourism infrastructure, a tourism improvement district was among the options that was considered. The board and the county commissioners at the time chose instead to maintain control of TLT with dedicating that 2% to tourism infrastructure. The industry respected that decision and was encouraged by the dedication, as you heard from some of our stakeholders earlier. The infrastructure fund and the reserve are a dedicated fund. The board created them for a long-term investment in tourism infrastructure. Redirecting any portion of that revenue reduces the likelihood that this infrastructure gap that we have struggled with will ever fully close. A fund that can be redirected will always face pressures. The commissioners that sit in your seats will face these pressures of competing priorities. And we raise this to name that reality and also to suggest that as we move forward, a conversation about the long-term structure of how tourism infrastructure investments are made is worth having. Because we want to move forward with you as towards our shared goal of building an infrastructure and a thriving, sustainable economy for every part of our region. So our request today is that on June 9th, the Board of County Commissioners asked for alternatives to funding public safety with TLT. And today we ask this board to find those alternatives, follow through on the commitment made in 2022, and direct the TLT increase as it was intended to an investment that grows Lane County's economy. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you, Samara. Next up, we have Josh Keelis with Austin Fulnage on deck.
Hello, Joshua Keelis, Road Neighborhood. I'm not going to say anything else because I know we've already covered the local access roads issues. I just wanted to say that I watched the session from last week, and it was obvious to me that you have all sincerely engaged with this problem, and I want to appreciate you for that because I know it's a really difficult issue, so thank you, sincerely.
Thank you, Joshua. Next up, we have Austin Fulnage with Bev Smith.
Chair Seneca, Vice Chair Heather Buck, thank you so much for your time. I live up the McKenzie River Valley area, and every time I come down here to say hi to you, I just want to thank you for your commitment, your dedication to my community and helping us rebuild our community up there, supporting businesses and supporting homeowners. So I wanted to take just a moment to thank you for your continued work on that. I'm here to talk about the disposal fees and making transfer station adjustments, but I also wanted to stand in solidarity with my neighbors with the LARs there. Overall, I support raising the disposal fees. I don't think of it as rubbish or anything like that to raise these fees. But I do feel that it is a poor choice to throw away any disposal centers or anything like that, especially in rural communities, because these are vital resources and infrastructure for our rural areas. I can speak from our community when the fires happened. Our disposal centers were incredibly important in the cleanup and in the rebuilding of our communities. If we close down rural transfer stations, there would be an increase in illegal dumpings and potentially even burning of trash in rural areas. So I definitely want to encourage us to consider options outside of closing stations, especially in rural areas. I do see the different recommendations in regards to the fee increases close to like Marion County and Deschutes County. I support that. But I also want to encourage potentially even like the high volume transfer stations, maybe like a separate fee there so that we can maybe adjust and potentially help increase the budget for these transfer stations, especially for those high use, high volume areas. Because again, closure of these stations would impact our communities. And when you look at the cost difference and the losses of some of these transfer stations, I also want you to consider like what would be the cost if we see more increases in illegal dumping and so forth. So those are things that I just want you all to consider as you have this discussion item later today. And again, thank you for your support of my community. I hope that you can have a broad conversation about choices and options in regards to these transfer stations and our solid waste programs. Thank you, by the way, staff, I know these are difficult conversations to have, by the way, so I want to thank you for exploring these different options and having the opportunity to discuss these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Next up, we have Bev Smith.
Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity once again to speak with you. My name is Bev Smith, and I'm speaking to you as the Executive Director of Emerald Kids Sports and a longtime former amateur professional Olympic basketball player. I know what sports can do for kids in this community and in any and all communities. I'm not here today just to talk about youth sports, but also to find a way to get it right for our community. Lane County wants to ask voters to approve a long-term public safety funding solution. I think most people in this community want to support public safety. I do too. I think my question for us today is how to do both. How to keep our promise to the community by investing TLT in the over decades intense market demand and the critical need for multi-sport facilities and convention space, and then public safety. That question is to be answered by you today. And as a longtime member of this community, I think we have a generational opportunity to invest not just in facilities that will enhance our community economically, but also help us stay true to keeping our promises to the community. When in 2023, this board dedicated 2% transient lodging tax increase to tourism-related facilities, that was a galvanizing moment for many of us in this community. And for those of us who have recently served on the revisioning or visioning of Lane Event Center, looking at the potential of this historic space and place becoming a destination for both community and county as a multi-sport facility, we sensed that we were finally trying to be on the road to getting it right. So today, I would urge you to be a leader in not going back to the future and not kicking this opportunity down the road, and to make the decision to preserve the TLT for the purpose it was intended for, a community asset that creates a year-round vibrant economy and a crucible for the health and well-being of our kids and our families. Thank you for your time and all your work.
Okay. Thank you. We're checking to see if there's anybody else that signed up in Terrace Hall. No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mokrajewski. Jessica, to you online, do we have anybody signed up?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have members of the public joining us. And for those joining us virtually, if you would like to give public comment, please raise your virtual hand now. Thank you. I see hands being raised. You will each have 3 minutes for your comments. First in our queue will be Tina Patel. I have unmuted your microphone and you may begin when you are ready. Oh, please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Tina Patel from Alco Hotels. I have spoke with you before. I am urging Commissioner to make sure that not to take away TLT dollars for public safety. I know how crucial it is, the public safety it is, but it should not be coming from one industry. In 2023, I was there testifying in front of you and very excited that We're raising 2% tax to have something, indoor facility, something for the winter events. You know, right now, I came into Lane County 30 years ago and with my 1-year-old daughter, and I had another boy, and they went to school over here and then went to college over here. The only thing that was lacking in the winter time as not a place to go, indoor things to do any activities that they can do any sports. It is very crucial to have something like indoor arena or anything that our children have something to do in a winter time. That is also critical on hospitality industry because like other people have said, you know, we have 150 employees and they are saying the same thing. We need more hours on a winter time. You know, we're not able to provide the hours because the occupancy is not there and there is no enough time, you know, to give it to our employee. So I want to thank you. I know you have a hard choice to do, but I'm really urging you not to take away TLT money and use the money what is intended for and keep it for the, sorry, keep it in a TLT, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Jolene Simson. Jolene, please unmute and you may begin.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Jolene Simpson, and I am here to speak on the issue of local access roads. I would endorse everything that has been said previously. I am a county resident. I pay transportation taxes. I live on a local access road, but I do expect equal treatment and consideration. As has been said, our roads are used by everyone. There is no restriction on Hawthorne Avenue. We have police, fire, EMS, garbage haulers, home service providers, and deliveries, which all travel up and down my section of Hawthorne Avenue to access the other half of my street, which is not a local access road. In fact, all of Hawthorne Avenue serves as a public right-of-way, and my road is a shared public asset. I urge the leaders of Lane County to take this time to address this dilemma and rectify the problem. As homeowners, we expect to be treated fairly and equally with appropriate measures taken to maintain our public right-of-way, adopt measures that redefine LARs as county roads, and budget for cost-effective maintenance and repair. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. Next, we will have Georgia Haskell. And Georgia, please unmute. Very good. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, commissioners and staff. My name is Georgia Haskell. I am the executive director of the Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce and a constituent of Commissioner Buck. Commissioner Buck, I would like to speak directly to you today because the decision affects the communities that you represent. You have championed keeping public dollars working for local businesses and families. And that is exactly what the transient lodging tax was designed to do. The 2% increase dedicated to tourism infrastructure is a public dollar that works for Cottage Grove, for our restaurants, our shops, our small business owners. We depend on visitors to sustain through the year. Rural communities like Cottage Grove do not have the economic cushion that larger communities do. We fill every gap in the visitor economy. When tourism investment is strong, our businesses do thrive. When it is redirected elsewhere, we feel it too, deeply. In 2023, this board made a commitment to build the infrastructure that would bring more visitors to communities like Cottage Grove year-round. That commitment gave our small business community hope. Redirecting those dollars today, even temporarily, signals that rural communities will have to wait a little longer while their dedicated investment is used for something else. I understand the county's public safety pressures, but please find another path to solving that problem. This fund was built for one purpose, to grow the local economy in every corner of Lane County. I am asking you today to keep that commitment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments. One last call. If you would like to give public comment virtually, please raise your virtual hand now. I see no further hands raised, Chair. I'll return it to you.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to thank everybody for their public comment. This is all part of the process, and here in governance, process matters. So next up, we will have our consent calendar. All items listed here are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered separately. Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. I move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026.
Second. A motion made by Commissioner Trigger to approve the consent calendar for June 23rd, 2026, seconded by Commissioner Farr. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Correction, Lovell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lovell was the second.
Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Appreciate it. By Commissioner Farr. All those in favor signify.
Commissioner Lovell, second.
Commissioner Lovell seconded. Thank you again. And we're back.
As chair, ever.
Appreciate all the help. All those in favor signify with
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Ooh, that was a tough one.
Okay, next up, we have Order 26062312 in the matter of approving a contract actions with St. Vincent de Paul Society and delegating authority to the county administrator.
Chair,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I need to declare conflict of interest on this particular item as I'm related to the Executive Director Emeritus of St. Vincent de Paul, who's still employed by them. And so I'm going to recuse myself and take myself off the screen for this item.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mokrahysky.
And Ms. Gray, it appears stepped out, so this is a routine item, but we put it on the regular calendar with respect to Commissioner Buck's need to recuse herself from the item so that you can take a specific vote on this item. So if there are questions, Chair, I can try to answer those.
Let's see if there's any questions first. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that was all. I would just assure this was, would have ordinarily been on our consent calendar, but for the need for recusal. So I will move approval of Order 26062312 in the matter of approving contract actions with St. Vincent de Paul Society and delegating authority to the county administrator, their designee, or subdelegate to sign the approved actions.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Trigger to approve Order 26062312 in the matter of approving contract actions with St. Vincent de Paul Society and delegating authority to the county administrator, seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with Buck. Recused. Thank you. Okay, next up we have item, Commissioner Buck, Vice Chair Buck is back. Okay, so we have County Administration, item 9A. Mr. Mokrahysky.
Thank you, Chair, and I think our Budget and Financial Planning Manager, Christine Moody, will be joining me momentarily. Jessica is going to pull up the presentation. Just a few comments to set the stage. I want to thank everyone who attended today and at prior meetings to provide public comment. Personally, very much respect the feedback that we've received from folks in the travel industry. I want to share maybe just a little bit of walk down memory lane. I was hired back in 2014, and one of the primary things that I was asked to do when I was hired in 2014 was help an organization transition and transform from having laid off over 200 people, having cut services significantly, in the continuing to deficit spend, and an organization that had lost a fair amount of public trust. I very quickly came to understand that the fundamental challenge that this institution faces is the comparatively low, what I call an artificially low permanent property tax rate. And I know this sounds like a broken record when we talk about this, but it is the issue we can't get away from. Lane County, there's no other county with the geographic size, the population size and density, the mix of urban and rural, the 5,000 square miles that require us not only to provide intense services in a dense metro area, but also services to far off. You heard from a resident who attended today from the Mackenzie River. It takes over an hour to get to the coast. It takes over an hour to get to the peak of the Cascades. So we are very unique in Lane County in terms of our geographic size, our population, our density, our mix of urban and rural. And the fact that we have such a low permanent property tax rate is a reflection of the fact that we relied so heavily on one industry, the timber industry, for decades. And that funding helped to support public safety services and road and bridge services, right? And we all know the story. That funding goes away, property tax caps go into effect in the mid-90s. We get some federal entitlement payments for about a decade in the early 2000s via the Secure Rural Schools program. That helps to stabilize and keep things somewhat stable, but the funds continue to decline. If you look back today, that's about a 90% decline in that funding. It's $40 million, 40 today, $40 million of funding in the general fund and the road fund wiped off the books just from the Secure Rural Schools funding. So that when we look back at 2012, 13, right before I came, that's what the county was reconciling with, was major layoffs, major cuts in services, an imbalanced budget, reserves that were being depleted because we were deficit spending, a bond rating that was lower than it should have been. So we very quickly set out a path to get our financial house in order in Lane County. We turned ourselves inward and said, if we're going to build public trust, what we need to do is get our financial house in order. We can't change the fact that we have one of the lowest permanent property tax rates in the state. Our public safety system, our road system is chronically underfunded. We can't change that directly without support from voters, but we can begin to rebuild our financial stability and the trust that the community has in us for doing the basic things right. That's what we've sought to do over the past 12 years. So we've gone from deficit spending to structural balance. We've gone from depleting our reserves and not having financial reserve policies. Christine, come on up here. I just started in because I don't want to launch into the presentation yet. We've gone from deficit spending to structural balance. We've gone from depleting reserves to building reserves. We've gone from no financial policies to having financial policies. We now have a 20% reserve in the general fund. That is new. That is a new thing. That is based on the Government Finance Officers Association, National Association, benchmark best practice to have a 20% reserve. And we've standardized all of that throughout our reserves. Since 2014, we've increased our bond rating twice, from a AA3, then to a AA2 in 2017, then again in 2019 to a AA1. We have the second highest bond rating offered by Moody's. The only reason we don't have a AAA, which is the highest bond rating, are factors outside of our control. They're community factors that we need to continue to work on. We met with Moody's 2 weeks ago to present to them our overview and update on our financial condition. And they've never done this before, but in the meeting, they essentially reassured us that we would get our AA1 again. Never do the rating agencies tell you in the meeting what your rating is likely to be. Christine was on this call. They love the fact that we have reserves that are stable. They love the fact that we have a plan that when we do use one-time money, like is proposed in this budget proposal in front of you, that we have a plan, right? That it's a bridge towards a plan, that we don't deficit spend, without any plan in place. So my hope is that bond rating continues. I'm worried, frankly, as your chief budget and financial officer for Lane County. I'm worried about putting at risk our financial stability. I want to make a few clarifying comments for the record. Again, I want to say very much respect the comments and the perspective and the advocacy of the folks that have been in the room. We've been very transparent about this process and the potential use of transient lodging taxes, going back at least 6 months in public meetings where I've sat in front of the board in public meetings and asked for in December, in January, in numerous meetings and said, if the legislature approves use of TLT for non-tourism related operations, do you support commissioners using that to help support public safety? And the answer I got was a resounding yes, with one exception. There's one commissioner that did not favor that, but 4 or 5 commissioners did. So we've headed down this path not to pit the lodging industry against public safety. It hurts me a little bit, I will say, the fact that I've worked with many of these folks for 12 years. I met with Brian Obey on May 4th and told him directly in a one-on-one meeting what the budget proposal was going to be, and he expressed no concerns, but then showed up in the public meeting to say that I should be ashamed of myself for making a proposal that we've been talking about for 6 months. So despite those types of comments, I want to root us, and the board has every ability. You are the policy body. You certainly can reverse this proposal. As the sheriff said, it's the board's, it's his job to tell you what his needs are. It's my job as your budget and financial planning officer to advise you on the things that are in the best interest of Lane County as an institution. So I wish that we didn't have to consider use of TLT. I'm glad that we're not in the position Deschutes County is in, where they've spent $6 to $7 million per year since the 70s for over 50 years of transient lodging tax on public safety. I'm glad that we're not in that position. So we've spent over 50 years not using TLT, but we were very transparent when the board established its legislative priorities and principles, going to the legislature and advocating for this because we need flexibility. We were transparent in our public meetings and asking for board direction before we made the proposal. We lobbied the legislature for this change. And I want to clarify, because the comment's been made several times, that the Public Safety Funding Task Force did not recommend use of TLT. That's not true. I attended almost all of those meetings. You attended almost all of those meetings. It's in the report. I've held it up. They specifically said, in one of the early questions that was asked from representatives of the business community, from representatives who are members both of the Eugene Chamber and the Springfield Chamber, they brought up the need to look at revenues that exist before asking voters for new revenue, specifically transient lodging tax. And the staff in those meetings advised the Public Safety Funding Task Force of 11 residents not to make a firm recommendation to use transient lodging taxes for public safety, because at the time, we didn't have the authority. And we said, it wouldn't be wise for you to make a firm recommendation to use something that we actually don't have the legal authority to do. But they strongly recommended we pursue that course, we seek legislative change, which we did, and that if we got legislative change, that we use TLT before considering asking voters. So I fully understand and respect the concerns expressed here today about the decision made by the board 3 years ago. And I think it's also important to recognize that the environment that we're in today and what has happened over the past 3 years has changed. So I want to be careful about not rewriting history, but actually telling history as it happened. So again, I want to be clear, this was a bridge. This is not use of one-time funding for ongoing operations without a plan. The board has specifically asked for, until we can get to a place that we can engage in a long-term solution with the community, we need a bridge to be able to continue to fund rural patrol for the next 2 years. So that's what this is intended to be. Whether you use general fund, road fund, you go below your 20%, or you stick with this proposal, any of those options you can do. But the plan is a short-term use of one-time funding as a bridge to get to a long-term solution. That has been one of the foundations of the things that we have changed here, that we no longer just throw reserve money at operations. We say, if we're going to use it, we need to have a plan in place. So I think I will stop there. Christine's got a few slides we want to run through. We have numbers that were asked for by the board on the June 9th meeting, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. So I think we're going to tag team this a little bit.
Sure.
We didn't
Yeah,
have a chance
let's
to
do
say, you do this slide, you do that slide, so we'll just kind of go through. Make sure, yes, I'm starting at the beginning. All right, so just very briefly, because I know we all know this, but there might be people tuning in today who are saying, what is this conversation about? So transient lodging tax, Lane County has actually 3 taxes that we track separately. They were adopted at different times. And this becomes important because of the moratorium that the state put in at a certain point in time. So the very first TLT in 1974, 5%, used predominantly for Lane Event Center. The 3% that is referenced for tourism, used for marketing, our museum, some of it goes to parks, rural projects, has a little more varied history there. It happened over multiple years. I point out those years only because the very last one listed there occurred after the state moratorium. So there was a little piece, part of Western Lane County, that stayed at 2%, while the rest of the county had 3%. That changed in 2008 when the 3% occurred everywhere countywide. And then we're aware of the 2002 tax of the additional 2%. So mentioning around those authorized uses that have been discussed, the state had a moratorium that was put in place. Jurisdictions who did not have a lodging tax could not implement a lodging tax after that point. And if you increased your tax, it had to be used for specific things. In the statute, when you read it, it reads like local jurisdictions who had a tax and implemented something after 2003 could use 30% of it for non-tourism related items. That's been cited to the board a couple times. Unfortunately, there was a City of Bend case that made it a little more confusing for people. They couldn't just go and read that statutory language. The Oregon restaurant and lodging industry sued the City of Bend related to their allocation of lodging taxes after that date, and it was determined that the percentage going to tourism needed to stay the same, even if you had implemented a new tax. For Lane County, what that meant, and the board heard this during some of the multi-use conversations, because we had put 100% towards tourism before 2003, we had to keep doing 100%. Didn't matter that we had done another tax in 2022. It had to be tourism related still. So then, as we're aware, there was a House Bill 4148 in 2026 that clarified that language, said that it could indeed be used for non-tourism related, a piece of it after 2003, and kind of removed some of that language that was causing the issue with the City of Bend case. This is a slide you saw during Budget Committee. So shows the allocation of TLT occurring over the last 10 years. This does not include the 2% because, as has been mentioned, the board hasn't allocated it to a specific project. So this is more focused on those specific tourism marketing, tourism capital. Some of that went to the City of Florence for some of their capital projects, tourism operations at Lane Event Center and parks, a historical museum, rural tourism that I mentioned, and projects and events that occur. Yeah. Oh, did you? Yeah.
I can do this one the next one. So want to just clarify again, the 8% of the 8% tax allocation that Christine went through that has been in existence, there is no change. There's no transient lodging tax in this proposal that is going towards a specific service or function that's being taken away from that service or function and being put into public safety. That has remained unchanged. Again, the largest percentage is going to tourism marketing. The 2% that is yet unallocated, again, the proposal, to be clear, is that there's both some amount in reserve and then there's the ongoing amount. The amount in reserve is what is generated over the past 3 years. And so the proposal in the budget is to take 50% of that reserve, approximately $6.5 million, and use $4.8 million of it for rural patrol for the next 2 years, and $1.7 for courthouse planning. I'll make a side note to you that, of course, the board knows because you approved the purchase of 99 East Broadway, just a block away. We just toured that facility last week with the mayor and city staff. We toured it several weeks ago with the business community, with the Eugene Chamber and business community members to talk specifically about the ground level of the 99 East Broadway building, that we are protecting that space, that ground level space, to really work with the business community and the city to try to activate that space to the park blocks, to have something that is not just a government function, that is nights and weekend activity, to bring some positive activity. These are investments and things that we've been doing for years and years and years, making county investments in different things like flattening the Pearl Street to allow for pedestrian walkability from the 5th Street to the alley area, as another example of things that we've done to try to support downtown revitalization. So part of what we need to do if we're going to advance the requirement of the county to provide an adequate courthouse, that's a requirement that we have under state law, is that we need funding both for planning, design, and construction of the renovation of the facilities that we've now re-envisioned as the new courthouse complex. So that's why we put $1.7 million, the total planning and design cost for the entire project, not just that building, but the courthouse and this building that we're in, the public service building. Planning and design is $9 million. The state has said they will provide 50%, $4.5 million. We are working with the Oregon Judicial Department to seek $4.5 million in funding in the Chief Justice's requested budget for the 2027 session. That would require Lane County to put $4.5 million in matching fund as well. So the 1.7, it would go towards that. It is, again, for planning and design. And then the other 50%, you see, we've used some funds for covered bridge stabilization, feasibility study for the multi-use facility, and the balance is maintaining in reserves. And then the other 50%, sorry, now that was the reserve, and now the other is the ongoing revenue. The 50%, the proposal in the budget was to dedicate it for courthouse complex improvements, that would be the funding that would help us advance this multi-million-dollar, multi-year project that would both invest in these facilities as well as the 99 East Broadway facility. The Budget Committee, as you know, took the action to sunset that after 2 years. So in the next slide, I'm not going to go through all these. I know this is kind of dense, but I made the opening comments just talk about, these are all the things, some of the things I should say, that we've done over the past 12 years to try to maintain service levels and even in some cases enhance service levels up until we've had more recent cuts from the federal and state government. We were on a really good track of structurally balancing our budget, building back reserves, and maintaining services. That was the trifecta of effort. And we were successful in doing that by focusing on things like employee health benefits and other fringe benefit costs. Let's dive into that and try to manage and reduce those costs as much as we possibly can. A lot of these things you see are things that other local governments, cities, and other counties in Lane County and across Oregon are now starting to look at doing. Many of them have not gotten on board with the employee health work, but that has been a huge payoff for us. So we continue these things. I think Lane County has often had a scarcity mentality that is both a good and a bad thing. On the good side, the scarcity mentality focuses us on making sure we're looking at every opportunity to be creative about how we reduce expenses and enhance revenues. So this list gives you an idea of the things that we've been able to do to preserve services throughout that period of time, build back reserves, maintain employment as much as possible throughout that period of time, and structurally balance our budget.
All right, so there was a request earlier in June when we were here for more information on the general fund policy. This is found in Lane Manual. I've deleted a little bit of text because it's a little wordy if you're reading the policy itself, and then kind of what's highlighted is the conditions for use. So these are policies that the board has adopted for themselves related to general fund reserve in particular, and then we'll talk about other funds after this. So there is a minimum 20% reserve. It is calculated using our operating revenue anticipated for the year. This reserve ensures that we have adequate cash flow. It provides a strong bond rating with agencies, protection of service levels to the community. In case we have revenue volatility, we can pull from it if something happened, but this is also in addition to contingency amounts. The only contingency that exists in the general fund is related to our vacancy variance. So when we reduce those personnel budgets, we've got to have some funding available. You just heard me talk in Supplemental 4 about how I had to pull from it for a contract that occurred mid-year. And so I think it's about 1.25 that we're assuming for next year as we push that vacancy variance percentage out into departments' budgets. So want to make sure that's separate from this. So the 20% has two pieces of it. It has an emergency reserve that is 17% of the 20, and it is to maintain cash flow and a strong bond rating. It is really about the general fund and its main revenue source being property taxes, which we do not collect until early December. So the bills start on July 1st. We've got to have money in the bank in order to pay everything before we receive our largest revenue source in early December. When I actually started as budget manager, we had a much lower reserve level, and there were times when we'd have to go out for a tax anticipation note rather than let our general fund go into the negative before we receive those. So conditions for use that the board has set for this 17% is to respond to a threat of public safety or public health that involves one or more of the following: severe revenue shortage threatening critical services, an involuntary conversion or destruction of Lane County property, a civil disturbance, a natural disaster, or public calamity. That public calamity is words that are used in budget law about when you can tap certain reserves. The other piece of the 20% is our 3% service stabilization reserve. So having this little bit higher reserve than the absolute minimum needed for cash flow allows us to get that very strong bond rating, having at least that 20% minimum. So that's the bond rating we have now. We would consider that very strong. I also want to highlight that funding, the policy talks about how to fund that 3%. It's from when we receive any one-time revenue into the general fund or the end of the year lapse. If departments do underspend their general fund allocations, those funds come back into the general fund reserve. Conditions for use I've highlighted for you. These are out of Lane Manual. In order to reduce the 3%, the conditions the board put on themselves were that the overall general fund operating revenue is growing at less than 2.5% annually, that current year property tax growth is below 2.5% annual, that local housing prices are more than 10% below any time in the prior 24 months, and then looking to unemployment and seeing that it's more than 2 percentage points higher than at any point in the last 12 months. So a little bit focused on what's happening in the community when there might be a time that the board would need to tap into that service stabilization reserve and then come up with a plan to replenish it.
So this gets to, I think, what y'all been waiting for, or piece of what y'all been waiting for, and then we have some more numbers for you. This is the general fund reserve as it sits today. The total reserve, the $33 million. Of that, $24.872 million is the 20% minimum reserve. 20% minimum reserve, again, that's your policy. You can violate that policy. It is your own self-imposed policy. So you don't have to live with that, but that's the policy that we've established for the general fund. Then you see 5.47 million of that 33 is already committed reserves. So these are projects and initiatives that the board has already committed funds to through other processes, prior budgets, other actions that you've made. The local incident for emergencies, that was last year's budget proposal that I made in the proposed budget to make sure that we had, I think it's 750 $750,000 that sits in a reserve that allows us for, wildfire, flood, ice, snow, smoke events that we have funding we can tap into in a short, quick amount of time to be able to be rapid in our response to meeting community needs for things that may not otherwise be funded. Stabilization Center, you're familiar with. That's something the Springfield City Council is working on the land use issues for. Tax foreclosed property litigation, we set some funds aside for that. And then other former ARPA projects and a technology improvement, which is the PeopleSoft modernization. So that's already committed, unless you were to say we want to decommit some of that and allocate it. Then you have $2.723 million in non-committed reserves. So that's excess reserve above the 20%. I will tell you that through the ARPA years, we were very diligent in making sure that we didn't squander the resources we had, but that we saved, and we saved so that we were able to stabilize. An example here would be, as we've seen significant continued reductions in Community Corrections Act funding from the state of Oregon that funds both jail beds and parole and probation officers, as well as funding for sponsors. That funding has declined, and the board knows we've had to make multiple years of biennium reductions in services, but to mitigate some of those reductions, the board has used some one-time reserves to buy a bridge to the next legislative session to work with the Association of Oregon Counties and our other county partners to try to find a more sustainable funding package from the legislature. So I just want to point that out, that those non-committed reserves they have depleted over the last several years because we have used portions of that to help stabilize public safety services during that period of time. I also want to make a note. Did you have another slide on?
There's not a slide on this.
So I'll just, the other comments I'll make about funding is to get to, if the proposal is to remove the 1% is sort of separate because that funding has not already been allocated. But if the proposal is to remove all $6.5 million in reserve funding that have been allocated to rural patrol and courthouse respectively, that is approximately $6.5 million. So in order to get to 6.5 million, right, if that is the problem you're trying to solve, you could take 2.7 million of the non-committed reserves. You would then need to take 2.487 million of additional general fund reserves. So you would you go down to about 18% on your minimum reserve. If you want to stay at 18, you could go further, but if you stay at 18, that'd be 2.487. That gets you to 5.2 million. We can go through these again if you'd like. You need to come up with another 1.32 million if you want to keep your minimum reserve at 18% in the general fund. So the other suggestion that had been requested was road fund. So you would need to pull 1.32 million from the road fund reserve, which of course goes towards road and bridge maintenance work. You can do that, or you cannot do that and just dip further into the 18%. Okay, I think that was everything there.
Yeah, we can also talk about, depending on what
you want to talk
questions you have. This is just, we touched base on this just a little bit, but this is where we've used that excess general fund reserve. As already mentioned, a lot of that came in from the American Rescue Plan. So it's not usual for us to have large unallocated general fund reserves, but we were very conservative in order to not start doing ongoing services with that ARPA money that we received. You might hear other local governments talking about larger budget reductions. They unfortunately needed to use those funds for ongoing, but we were really diligent and put it away. But we have had places like parole and probation. Just for context, last biennium, you put $5 million of unallocated general fund to parole and probation in the sheriff's office and sponsors in order to keep them at the level minimal level. They also had reductions, as was noted. Behavioral Health Stabilization Center, we've covered shortages when the Secure Rural Schools Act is now lower than the timber funds would be in the general fund, and we've had to cover that difference with reserves. Otherwise, we'll need to reduce down to the Secure Rural Schools level. That's about 1.5 million. Difference is estimated right now. And then there have been some limited duration positions. As I mentioned, we were careful not to do ongoing things, but we've had limited duration in family child health. We had some extra custodians during COVID, external auditor, our financial auditor having assistance, and legislative support are some examples of that. Other reserves, I do just want to highlight that our policy also does talk about road fund very specifically. It has a much higher reserve level by policy. It has a 40% minimum reserve because it has a lot of assets that it maintains. So the road and bridge assets, and that's broken up into pieces that I mentioned here. And then other funds, we establish those based on what's needed by that fund. So we don't have a blanket percent. Years ago, we did, like everyone needs a 5% reserve. That might not make sense for that fund, depending on their cash flow, depending on their assets that they're responsible for. So we look at those through the budget process each year. The impact of spending from those funds, dependent on the fund. Most of those funds are restricted. We mentioned the road fund because it receives Secure Rural Schools money. Gas tax cannot be transferred out of the road fund for anything else. Only Secure Rural Schools funding or the timber. We already move what we think the annual timber is every single year to patrol, so we're really focused just on that Secure Rural Schools and the recent renewal of Secure Rural Schools. We do also have public works staff here who could speak to the impacts if you do make a motion to pull the 1.3 that's been discussed with road fund. They do have a lot of that allocated to projects. So they could speak to what that expenditure decrease would look like for them. So just wanting you to know they're in the audience with anything there. And then here was those options. Using unallocated general fund, just wanted to point out the risks to you, unable to cover those funding shortages. It was also mentioned providing match funds for projects or services that are needed. If we use the SRS portion in the road fund, I just mentioned it is being used to fund road and bridge projects. Using general fund reserve can impact our bond rating. As we mentioned, we just spoke with Moody's. We told them that everything we were aware of was that the reserve would stay stable compared to what it has been. We would spend down this little bit of extra ARPA money and then stay stable. It's difficult to rebuild that. It relies on underspending. It's been an anomaly with having this extra ARPA money. And then service reductions in the general fund, depending on the service reduced, would impact risks there.
Final comment, Chair, and then we'll turn it over to you. I guess I want to wrap it up by saying you have a policy question in front of you, and that is a valid and legitimate and critical investment in economic development and placemaking and tourism, driving the tourism destination, or maintaining the reserves, financial stability, bond rating, investment in facility needs that the county has, and in public safety. Those are not two things that are pitted against each other, okay? And I don't feel ashamed for making the recommendation, particularly because of the way in which we went about it, that it was fully transparent. So while I don't love the personal attacks and the rewriting of history, I think that what's in front of you is a legitimate policy decision. You can choose to say, we want to prioritize and invest in the destination and the economy, and that has value and is critically important. Or you can say, we've built a really strong financial foundation that we stand on. We want to maintain that and continue it. We know we have to invest in the courthouse facility. That's a policy choice, okay? It's a policy choice. I'd love to go back to a time when we could disagree without being disagreeable. So I hope that others can respect that the proposal that we made 6 months ago and have continued throughout this process is based on our requirements, and I will say my requirement as your Chief Financial and Budget Officer. I also care deeply, as do all of us on the staff and the board, about our local economy, about making investments that help not just draw tourists here, but also that create living wage jobs and family supporting jobs via investments in manufacturing and high-tech industry, which is why we've been so involved with the South Willamette Valley Innovation Corridor, why I serve on that group, why I serve on the Onward Board of Directors group, and why we all partner with our business communities in varying ways because we care deeply. So I will say I am concerned about the notion that public trust would be broken here. That concerns me. And I think that's what's being put, and I'm not disagreeing with that notion. I'm saying it concerns me, and I believe it concerns you, and it should concern you. So I think that's something that you also need to weigh, because the last thing I want to do, and I know you want to do, is advance something that will may be the right thing to do on its merits, and maybe we went through a process that was fully transparent and engaging and right within our roles and responsibilities, but if it has the effect of breaking public trust, government today cannot stand any more loss of trust. This is one of the going concerns that I certainly have. So put all of that for you. I know, and I want to be clear, you all are the policy body and you get to make this decision. I hope that we presented you with some options for varying things and we can talk through and answer your questions as they come.
Okay, so we have very important 11 o'clock time certain today. Here, according to ORS 294, we have to approve this by July 1st. Is that correct?
Correct, by midnight, June 30th, yes.
Okay, to the board. Commissioner Farb.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple of minutes, Chair. The first thing I'm going to state, thank you, Mr. Mokrajewski, is that, and I'm going to restate this, my trust in your ability to prepare, present, and maintain the budget of Lane County. Ms. Moody, you've been here before longer than I have, and I've continued to and continue to trust your ability to present us with a budget. And doing that within the policy that is established by the board on an ongoing basis, never deviating from the policy as prescribed by the board. During the recent Budget Committee meetings, when we were discussing TLT funding, using the reserve and the ongoing to balance the budget this year, as presented, I stated that we needed to do that with great solemnity. Since then, solemnity has increased, and this is a part of the solemnity of that decision that I prescribed at that point in time. This is really important decisions that we have to make at this point in time. Regarding TLT, I have a lot of background there. In 2003, I was in the state legislature. When I went to the legislature in 2003, I'd been on the Eugene City Council for 8 years. Prior to that, I've been on the school board for years, and understanding Measure 5 and understanding Measure 47 and 50, and also understanding the very strict nature of TLT, which the city of Eugene uses in its own budget, and did for the 8 years that I was on the Eugene City Council. In 2003, we passed important legislation that I was a part of. 2003, it was House Bill 2267, which stated, among many other things, a unit of local government that imposes a local transient tax on July 1st, 2003 or after may not decrease the percentage of total local transient lodging tax revenues that are actually expended to fund tourism promotion or tourism-related facilities. That held in place. That passed unanimously. I think it was 57-0 in the House and a similar percentage in the Senate. From that moment forward, all transient lodging tax that was generated had to be spent on, I'm going to get this exactly accurate, tourism promotion or tourism-related facilities. That's from the bill, 2003. It was recently in 2026 that House Bill 4148 changed that. Local jurisdictions did lobby for the changes, and it did change, allowing different uses. We're in that phase right now, but until then, the bill that I passed in 2003 held solid and intact, and it remained the same until the legislature changed it in this past year. So as we move forward, I'd like to say I don't take exception with the budget that was presented to us, and I don't criticize the thought process that went into the budget. As I make the recommendation that I'm going to make, it really takes into account that Ms. Moody, you and Ms. Mokrajewski have done the very best to present us with the budget within the policies that we have. And that being said, Chair, what I would like the board to consider is reducing the general fund reserve to 18.5% and using the balance up to 5.2 million to, up to 6.5 million from road fund to replace the reduction in transient lodging tax reserve that had been generated by the 2% lodging tax that we passed in 2 years ago. So the exact wording of that I'll give you, but that is my proposal, 18.5% in general fund reserve and the balance out of road fund to cover the entire budget as presented by Mr. Mokrzycki.
Okay. I thought, Mr. Mokrzycki, didn't you say 18% in your?
I did, but I heard Commissioner Carr modify that to 18.5.
And I'd been considering 18%, but 18.5 with the balance out of road fund, which has a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more in there. However, much more asset to deal with. We understand that. And we understand, again, that this is with great solemnity that we go below what I, as a board member, nobody else in this room other than Ms. Moody and Director Williams were here when we passed the 20%, but we did that, and we are, as a policy, would be violating our own policy to go down to 80.5%, and that is my proposal.
Yep, just wanted to verify. Appreciate it. Commissioner Trieger?
Thank you. I have a quick question about that, about it being our policy. Does that require, is that codified anywhere? Or is that just sort of a standing practice of the board, the 20% reserves?
It's in lane manual.
It is in lane manual, so it requires a bit of a process to change.
Correct.
Beyond, I mean, we need an order in front of us to do that. We would have to come back with an order at the next board meeting to affect that change?
That is correct.
I mean, the question is whether or not they can take that action. They can take the action they're proposing to take today before the manual is changed.
I believe you're both correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, they could do that and then conform the lane manual to the action.
That was my understanding.
Right.
That if you want to take action today to that front, you can come back and we can modify the policy. It's a board-adopted policy.
Right, understood.
It would have surprised me if that was not the case.
Thanks. Just clarifying order of operations and timing. Chair, I'm frustrated and challenged because I spent a great deal of time preparing for this item, and we're up against an 11 a.m. time certain. And I frankly, I am trying very hard to winnow through my notes to consider the proposal on the table, but also give due to having gone back and rewatched budget presentations, public hearings, public comment during when we increased the transient lodging tax against assertions of what support was and what the comments for support and what the indicated intention of that was at the time. Reviewing House Bill 4148. I've spent quite a bit of time to prepare for this and have a lot of comment, and I'm frustrated that we are being presented with making such a solemn and important decision at the 11th hour after months and months and months of a great deal of work on behalf of staff and department directors and our community members on our budget committee. And I think I appreciate all of the administrators' comments. A lot of them reflect some of the notes and things I wanted to call out in terms of some of the misrepresentations of fact. And I just want to say this is a really important moment for us about governance, about good governance. And the legislature exercised good governance in creating more flexibility for local governments all over the state who are faced with these really untenable decisions around funding core services. There is some wisdom from farming community that says you don't eat your seed corn. To me, that is what dipping into reserves is. It feels irresponsible when we have a fund that we have been gifted the opportunity to exercise good governance and have flexibility by the state legislature to set that opportunity aside and dip into our seed corn feels really irresponsible and like it's not good governance. I respect the advocacy. I have been an advocate for many, many issues over many, many years. But the advocates are always right and working on one issue at a time. Our job is more complex, and we have greater accountability to far more constituencies than to advocates. This is not about all TLT. It's a discussion over a portion of a portion. I'm a huge fan of doing what we can to bring more indoor play and practice space to this county, and we have embarked on a good faith effort to see if that is viable or feasible, but there is currently no actual project. There is no location decision, there is no pro forma, there is no operator, there is no other financial backing that has been identified that would make up the vast majority of what it would take to build such a thing. There is no significant concrete progress on a concept that was floated decades ago and has not gained traction, but there is an evident lack of available resource to fund core services. And I just cannot in good conscience let safer communities go wanting and risk our own financial stability as an organization and let that money go. I apologize, Chair. I really wish we had more time. This is frustrating. And so my final comment and question is.
If we had more time, would you like to ask that question then?
Well, it's whether there's another process we could take through supplemental. Could we adopt the budget that has gone through all of the rigor and good governance process that we have always done and take it in good faith, and then have a work session and reconsider whether there are adjustments we want to make through a supplemental at a later time, rather than doing something like this on the fly? That's a process question.
That is an option. The other option is you can continue this item, because I appreciate we had a lot of public comment this morning, and things took longer than they needed to. Or not that they needed to. They took exactly the time they needed to get to where we are, but it's not enough time. We could take this up later today. You could continue it until tomorrow, as long as you don't adjourn the meeting. So you could continue tomorrow morning if commissioners are available. You could schedule a special meeting next week. That's probably harder. So my suggestion would be you can't, or you could approve and then do a supplemental. I would argue probably the easiest thing to do is come back later today or tomorrow morning to continue this. That's up to you.
Okay. Well, we have an 11 o'clock time certain. If the board is willing to come back this afternoon and revisit this topic, I would love to continue working on it.
I'd support that, Chair.
Okay, so, I got head nods. So I'm going to read us into our executive session, our 11 o'clock executive session, and we will continue this afternoon. Okay. Board of County Commissioners will now meet in one executive session. This session is to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry out on labor negotiations, and is held pursuant to ORS 192-6602D, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purpose listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video record, or otherwise record an executive session. Verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision may be made in the executive session. We will return to regular session today at 1:30 p.m. in Harris Hall.
Gloria.